Kamala Harris, unfortunately, was not charismatic enough, and her policies were awful. Bernie Sanders, on the other hand, not exactly charismatic, but is an earnest communicator and has the policies. Do you understand? So apparently Semaphore interviewed Kamala Harris's digital chief on Democrats losing hold of the culture. And in this, he dropped my name. Okay, the campaign needed to introduce Harris quickly to people who aren't obsessed with politics. Sports is perhaps America's last remaining monoculture, and Flaherty and the Harris team decided to book her on sports shows and podcasts. But one by one, the biggest personalities in shows politely turned them down. Sports and culture have sort of merged together, and as sports and culture become more publicly and sort of natively associated with this Trump conservative set of values, it got more complicated for athletes to come out in favor of us. Flaherty, 33, told me in an interview last week, it got more complicated for sports personalities to take us on their shows because they didn't want to do politics. That's not to say Steph Curry and Steve Kerr and LeBron James and all of them coming out wasn't impactful or important, he said. It was more impactful because it had gotten so much harder. But certainly the culture has been associated with heavy sports watching, has become associated with right-wing culture in a way that makes it hard for us to reach people. First of all, L. Second of all, skill issue. But last but not least, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that sports watching across the board is just like dominated by right-wing sentiment, even though virtually everything online is incredibly right-wing. I don't think that that's the case. I just don't. Stephen Curry's burner. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Maybe you should gift the biggest gift of all, not friendship, but instead socialize housing in your neighborhood. That's what you should be doing instead of being an additional hurdle to homeless shelters being built in your neighborhood because you think it's going to ruin the culture. Your haters have been having a meltdown over this article. Is this who you meant when you said the Harris campaign wanted you at the DNC? This is the deputy campaign manager. I didn't know that the deputy campaign manager was Hasanabi head. I did not know that. I wish he would have listened to my advice a little bit. But anyway, Faraday declined to say who turned Harris down, but she didn't appear on key shows hosted by sports figures sympathetic to Democrats like Colin Cowherd, Bill Simmons, or the Kelsey brothers. As Semaphore first reported at the time, Harris did appear on All the Smoke, a popular but more niche basketball podcast, and NFL Hall of Famer Shannon Sharp's Club Shay Shay podcast. The campaign's failure to completely crack the sports sphere was, to Flaherty, ominous, and a part of a larger trend in which some influencers who had felt comfortable engaging with the Biden White House demurred when asked to help Harris make her case to her followers. When it's not cool to talk about politics, he said, you're kind of afraid of the audience. You don't even have to talk about politics. The problem is Kamala Harris. I think the environment for politics is changing a little bit as well. Like political communication is changing as well, where you can't just be a political personality who is like uptight and constantly on note. You can't have a Pete Buttigieg style person, right? You have to be more of a real person. If you want to live in the post-Trump universe, you have to kind of play ball. You have to be a personable human being. It's a very weird thing to demand from politicians. I guess back in the day, when information was significantly more limited and confined to network television, you could do what is known as retail politics, right? You know, you can have these setups where you basically faked human interaction. But digital retail politics is very different. Digital retail politics is what is in demand now, and you have to learn the language of online to be able to do that successfully, and you have to be personable. You have to, instead of going to the Iowa, corn shucking festival or whatever and eating a hot dog, you actually have to do this shit. You have to go on the podcast circuit. And in order to do that, you can't be a bot and you can't be an NPC. And unfortunately for Kamala Harris, like there were definitely podcasts where she shined, right? I think like whenever she went on, I don't know, like a HBCU adjacent podcast, I think she did a pretty decent job, much better than like Hillary Clinton, for example. Having said that, however, there's like a massive marketplace where she did not have her own, she did not have this opportunity at all. She was not able to have this opportunity at all because like she's kind of a bot, you know, she's kind of an NPC. She's like too scared to have a personality. That could be because she is a black woman in politics, and you don't have the leeway of a white man in politics, a rich white man in politics. I'm sure that that's part of it, right? But I think that it's not even about having charisma. It's more so just being honest. Like, it's not like Bernie Sanders is a tremendously charismatic individual. Okay? He's not. He's a old ass nerd. But Bernie Sanders is earnest. Okay? And that's the reason why when he does those like Theo Von appearances and whatnot, they blow up and people like it. Tim Walz would have done a pretty good job in the podcast circuit, something that I brought forth time and time again. But like, the age of technocratic neoliberalism is over. It just doesn't sell. I don't even know if it ever really sold, but since it was the only game in town, a lot of people were like, all right, whatever, I'll vote for this, right? I mean, here, look at the way that Timothy Chalamet's talking about Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, we had Bernie Sanders on, and he was saying that he said Pete Seeger was one of his favorite musicians.
Scoot McNairy could play Bernie Sanders in a biopic.
Oh, he could.
Right?
Yeah.
Totally could. Bernie hasn't aged.
Nah, Bernie still looks the same. He's the best. Dude.
He's looked the same in the last... Yeah. He's like a real folk hero.
It's a great point.
Yeah, Bernie is...
He is a folk hero.
Yeah, he's folk.
Yeah, no wonder he loves Pete Seeger. Of course he does. So, but that's it. Like, look, that's it. This is the way that like normal people respond to Bernie Sanders. He isn't like the most charismatic person on the planet. Far from it. Far from it. But he's honest. He's earnest. He cares about these things that like, you know, will genuinely improve people's lives, and he advocates for them viciously, right? And I think that is what matters. I think that is important. And I don't think a Kamala Harris type person is going to be able to do that. I think Tim Walz could do that. Tim Walz has a little bit of that dog in him. But for that to happen, the Democratic Party also has to change its messaging. The Democratic Party has to change its establishment Democrat, third way neoliberalism as a policy, win or lose attitude. You know? In July 2023, a year before Harris became the nominee as the Republican primary campaign was underway, I spoke with Flaherty, who was then running a digital strategy for the White House. There, he had helped shape the White House alternative media strategy, working to help support their own network of diehard supporters and dishing out exclusives to alternative media, liberal media. Some of Biden's first interviews after he nominated then Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court last month went to the popular Substack writer and professor Heather Cox Richardson and the left-leaning news YouTuber Brian Tyler Cohen. Flaherty was also paying close attention to how the race was being run on the Republican side. Donald Trump was leaning into new podcasts, and his opponents were tapping a large network of right-leaning and conservative personalities to amplify their messages. The reality of the matter is, he didn't just tap in to right-wing ecosystem. He didn't just tap into the right-wing ecosystem. He went in to as many outlets as possible that would have him. That's the thing that people don't comprehend. Like, I wouldn't say Theo Von is right-wing. I don't think he is. Joe Rogan is, but he's unique. And Joe Rogan wasn't right-wing for the longest part. You know? Democrats, Harris 2028 presidential run. Yeah, no, this is bullshit. I don't believe that this will happen. They're writing these articles. They're writing these articles specifically because Kamala's going to sell a book eventually. And that's it. That's it. I think that the only reason why they're saying that is because like she's going to write a book and they want to sell it. That's it. There's no one's going to read your book if you're not going to run again. Yeah, it's bullshit. I don't think she's going to run again. All right. Anyway, let's continue. Then he acknowledged that the Republican Party had done a better job building up its alternative digital media ecosystem with podcasters, YouTube streamers, and friendly pundits. But he argued that the then Biden campaign would overcome those obstacles by better navigating the personalized internet, which by which sophisticated algorithms feed America's highly specific information tailored to their taste and online behavior. Speaking with me again last week, Flaherty said that remained their theory of the case the entire time. The campaign knew from the beginning that the race was going to come down to voters who do not pay attention to politics or mainstream news and instead get their information from people on YouTube, their friends, Instagram stories, or links or memes dropped into a group chat. This firstly meant a shift in paid advertising from the previous campaign. Instead of just blanketing the airwaves of battleground states, the campaign also invested heavily in ads on YouTube, recognized the rapid growth in streaming. That's where the campaign's data showed many Harris key voters were spending their time. More importantly, this meant building out a strategy focused more on podcast appearances and interviews with influencers than on traditional media. But they failed on that. Tim Walz is not as truthful as JD Vance. Just letting you know. Yeah, I think you're on crack cocaine if you think that. JD Vance is a literal rat. The people do not respond positively to JD Vance. The people respond positively to Tim Walz. Okay? One is a real American from the heartland. The other one is a carpetbagger who basically sold out his own people in an effort to elevate his presence by liberals for years, only to turn around and then brown nose the Republican right, which he once called correctly a bunch of fascists. He changed his entire worldview at the age of 35, acted like he got groomed by mainstream media to think that Trump was a Nazi. That's not a real person at all. J.D. Vance is Republican Pete Buttigieg. La rata. Anyway, let's continue. Thanks for letting me know, though, chatter. So, Harris extremely limited time. There's just no value with respect to my colleagues in the mainstream press in a general election to speaking to the New York Times or speaking to the Washington Post because those readers are already with us, Flaherty said. Flaherty isn't dismissive of television and other legacy media. One of the most important moments of the campaign was her interview with Brett Baer. That was a huge fundraising moment. It was a huge social moment. When Trump did the McDonald's thing, it was smart because it was a thing that obviously drove television coverage, but it also drove social media engagement too. And those things often happen in tandem, but they don't always. And so it was the sweet spot. It drove traditional coverage and non-traditional media. I don't think TV is dead. It's still probably the most important thing, but it's the literal TV. And what's on it that matters. As the campaign wore on, though, Flaherty said he realized the failure to gain traction in certain corners of the media reflected a deeper problem, one that wasn't solved when Harris replaced Biden on the ticket. The Harris campaign, representing what many voters saw as an embodiment of the status quo, was running contrary to not just ideological distrust of establishment figures, but to media trends. The media successes of 2024 were independent, non-traditional online personalities who themselves were avatars of the rewards of going up against the establishment. The reason folks are seeking alternative sources of media and are turning away from political news is because they don't trust their institutions. They don't trust elites. They don't trust the media. They don't trust all this stuff. So the party of elites and institutions is going to have a hard time selling to people in those places, Flaherty said. Now, I want to point out something here. Because a lot of people will say, Hasan, the only appeal that you have is because you're anti-establishment, right? And to them, I say, you are not paying attention. Because as much as I rail against mainstream media, I still rely on mainstream journalism. As much as I rail against mainstream media, I still interview New York Times journalists. I interview CNN journalists. I interview and give interviews to mainstream media. Because I understand that there is an importance within these institutions, okay? As much as I rail against establishment Democrats, I had Lena Khan, the commissioner of the Federal Trade Commission. That is as institutional as it gets. As much as I rail against the establishment Democrats, I still champion the NLRB. I still champion the many wins even of the Biden administration, especially as it pertains to the regulatory agencies. I understand the importance of these agencies. That's the difference. I am not a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian. I do not actually yell about the establishment Democrats in an effort to gain clout. Okay? And I think that's a silly way to approach it. And I think that's a silly way to operate in general. I've never been an advocate for destroying institutions just because they work in a corrupt manner. That's the difference between someone like myself and someone like RFK Jr. RFK Jr. looks to the EPA and says, or looks at the FDA and says, there's a lot that's wrong with the FDA. We must blow it up. I look to it and I say, abolish corruption rather than destroy and deregulate this regulatory body. That's the difference. I have a purpose. I understand that the government must exist. I understand that it can exist. Okay? So I just want to point that out for people that don't fully understand where I'm coming from in a lot of these instances. When it was said that people like you and Chapo were also the biggest cheers of Biden's W's than mainstream, it was mind-blowing because it's true. Yeah. When Biden exhibited the courage, demonstrated the courage and expended political and social capital to pull our troops out of Afghanistan, I was there defending that action. So was Chapo. Mainstream media was not defending that action. They were railing against them because they are deeply aligned with the interests of the defense industry. Okay? That's the difference. It's not as simple as go to Joe Rogan and talk about how great democracy is and the importance of preserving the independence of the DOJ or whatever. You've got to speak their language. And I think there are plenty of cultural touch points. I mean, Joe Rogan was at least recently for Medicare for All. Theo Vaughn is really against money in politics and the way that pharma has flooded our communities with opioids. Those are all things that the Democrats have something to say on. But as long as we seem like the party of the system, the people who are anti-system and looking for anti-systemic media, we're going to have a hard time connecting with them. Now, nowhere was this more clear than within the manosphere of podcasters and content creators like Rogan and Vaughn. To them, Trump had become less toxic and more based, and he rewarded his supporters with access. Flaherty said the Trump campaign successfully used new media to reshape culture, while Democrats found that the mass media institutions that had long largely supported them were weaker than these new cultural drivers. It's more than just young men. It's a broader ecosystem, he said. Democrats have historically had these really close relationships with institutional media. Institutional culture, Hollywood, and the traditional press. There's this entire cultural ecosystem that Trump campaign did a really good job cultivating over a long period of time. We should get Jennifer Abruzzo, general counsel to NLRB, next. She's responsible for reenacting the Joy Silk Doctrine and numerous other labor W's. You're right. I'm down to do that as well. Flaherty also acknowledged that Elon Musk's purchase of X, Twitter, played a major role in the campaign, further tilting the scale of online culture and information towards Trump. Its importance was twofold. One, it was where you reach elites and high information people. But two, it was also the kind of place where politics could sort of careen into culture. And so it was really important. It was a really important central node, even if it wasn't the farthest reaching platform, he said. Having that node be fundamentally controlled by effectively an arm of the Trump campaign was not good, really a problem. And so Elon obviously sort of achieved his ends there. It was obvious that center left and left content was being throttled compared to right content. But while the campaign came to believe it was fighting an uphill battle against culture, moving in the opposite direction, it also made some strategic errors of its own based on faulty assumptions. Flaherty said that one place he understated the Trump campaign was a central part of the former president's digital strategy. The Harris campaign thought that Trump's team decision to continue talking to the manosphere meant he would simply be reaching the same audiences over and over again. But the incredible frequency of those appearances helped build the former president's credibility with that audience, which seeped out. He also said Harris's campaign never quite figured out one of its earlier strategies, which was to get its messaging organically into family group chats and private media, partially because they couldn't nail what kind of content would spread that way. I think that's one that ended up being a lot harder to execute on. Over the last several weeks, many professional Democrats I've spoken with feel that they've successfully identified her problem. But the next step for Democrats' media strategy are uncertain. When I met Flaherty this week in New York, he was contemplating his own professional future and what his role would be. To Flaherty, part of this starts with putting real effort into building the left and center left's own independent media ecosystem, divorced from the nonpartisan media that has historically satiated Democrats' appetite. Flaherty said one silver lining of the election was that many hardcore Democratic partisans have begun to waver from their satisfaction with legacy media. Yes, I changed the camera to full cam because I think it's better to just like read the article, but also have it be full camera. They are never going to trust the New York Times, and they're never going to distrust the Washington Post, he said. They're never going to not trust the New York Times, and they're never going to distrust the Washington Post, Flaherty said. But I think that in a Trump era, you start to see frustrations with mainstream media come to a boil. And I think there will be smart people who try to fill the gap, more individuals who create content on the left and center-left messaging. Flaherty said that Democrats need to invest boosting independent partisan friends online, as well as content creators and media figures who haven't been explicitly political but could reflect liberal and progressive values to counter the surging online pro-Trump right. Flaherty does not understand a fundamental part of this. And although he brings me up in literally the next moment after this is Kamala Harris's digital chief, okay? A fairly high level person in Kamala Harris's campaign. And yet I think, and I don't know if he's watching this right now, I don't know if he can hear me speak on this matter. I have spoken on this extensively to CNN and numerous other outlets at this point. But I think this fundamentally misses a very important point. Okay? Trump did not boost and offer money to these center-right podcasts. Trump was able to go there, meet them where they're at, and communicate with them in a way that was somewhat apolitical. Okay? Part of that is because there are a lot of, I guess, social issues that they aligned on to a certain degree. But more importantly, it's because Trump is a famous TV personality and he's carried that attitude throughout the first 4 years. And certainly to this day, he still carries that attitude. That's it. This is not something that Kamala Harris can recreate. There is also a lot more leeway, creative liberties that you can take on when you are a right-winger. Like, you can just kind of get away with saying whatever the fuck you want. You can get away with saying you can get away with being a dumbass. But Trump's charisma certainly carried him across the finish line. It wasn't that like he had fantastic policies or whatever, but he could tell a story real well. And that goes a long way. He was able to, in spite of being a billionaire born with a silver spoon, a real estate tycoon with numerous failed businesses under his belt, he was able to present himself as a real guy, as opposed to all of these other fake, phony guys, the Democrats, and even Republicans that stood against him. So you have to have, for me, I've been covering politics for quite a while at this point. I have 3 general elections under my belt. at this point, at this moment. Okay. And what I have seen in that experience as a professional political commentator, you need one of two things. And if you can have both, it's fantastic. You either have to have good policy that truly addresses the issues that people are experiencing, or you have to have good charisma to be able to come across as authentic and earnest. Okay? If you have both, that's a killer combination. No one in my lifetime, I think, has had both. Trump doesn't have good policies, but he has an incredible way of reading the room and recognizing the resentment and anger that people feel, and then channeling that resentment and anger to vectors of hatred that are inoffensive to the pre-existing hierarchies. Trump is also very charismatic. He's very telegenic. Kamala Harris, unfortunately, was not charismatic enough, and her policies were awful. Bernie Sanders, on the other hand, not exactly charismatic, but is an earnest communicator and has the policies. Do you understand? The keys is on the keys. I am not making keys, okay? I'm not doing some Alan Lichtman style shit. And I'm not even saying this is a perfect scientific formula to win elections. I'm not saying that at all. That would be idiotic. I'm sorry, but why do we have to dumb it down for chat? No offense. Wait, what? I always dumb everything down for every single person. Trump is not charismatic. He's gross. He's charismatic to bigoted people. Okay, well, you can keep saying that, but it doesn't matter. He was a very famous television star. Yeah, I wonder who represents the average American better in an election. Someone who consistently gets banned from this chat over and over again for being annoying, or the guy who won the goddamn election. I apologize to my well-intentioned chatters who are, maybe hypersensitive to microaggressions or whatever the fuck. But the reality of the matter is, okay, if I were to even listen to your whims, I would be a very different content creator. I would be a much less successful content creator. That's just the truth of the matter, okay? Sometimes you have to just take a back seat. Sometimes you have to take a back seat and just listen to what I have to say instead of, chiming in and saying something that obviously is demonstrably untrue for the broader audience, for the broadest subsects of American politics. Did Clinton or Biden have more charisma than Bernie? No, not Hillary Clinton, if that's who you're asking. But I think that Bill Clinton had charisma, for sure. I think Obama had charisma. He maxed out on a charisma, and he had some pretty decent policies as well. But it was mostly the charisma that actually packaged whatever he was selling. That's what carried him, okay? That's what carried him. Anyway, so here's what Flaherty says. We need a whole thriving ecosystem. It's not just Pod Save America, though I think we should have more of them. It's not just Hasan Piker. We should have more Hasan Pikers. It's also the cultural creators, the folks who are one rung out, who influence the nonpartisan audience. Okay, I don't disagree with this. Those things all need to happen together. The problem is, you can't inorganically develop this. I guess you can pump money into it a little bit to give it more prominence, to give it more respect, to give it more legitimacy. But you can't inorganically create the same, you can't do a Nelk Boys, but for the left, because the Nelk Boys were not created by the Republican Party, okay? You can look at Daily Wire. Daily Wire is a great example. Daily Wire is a direct political operative. Daily Wire is not funded by the Republican Party. Daily Wire is funded by those who fund the Republican Party. Do you understand? Daily Wire is not directly funded by the Republican Party, but the same billionaires that fund the Republican Party also fund the Daily Wire. But that's a direct political operative, right? That's a very obviously partisan ideological project. What we're talking about here isn't the Daily Wires of the world. What we're talking about isn't necessarily even the Joe Rogans of the world, but the Theo Vons of the world, the Nelk Boys of the world, or the Barstools of the world that sometimes find themselves in the throes of right-wing politics. The issue here is these people, just like the broader voting population, have found themselves cast aside by the Democratic Party. And the reason why they found themselves cast aside by the Democratic Party is because the Democratic Party keeps saying, we have no space for you. We have no space for you. You're bad. You're wrong. We're not going to give you any policies that are good. We're going to do everything in our power to say, if you want that stuff, you're lame. You're bad. Like Bill Burr is a great example of a person who is right there. He's right there. He's aligned just like myself. He's closest to me in, I would say, political perspectives without being a political operative, right? He's right there. But just like Kamala Harris can't come on my stream, she's not going to go on Bill Burr's podcast either. So even if you were to make a lefty Daily Wire or whatever, even if you were to pump the Young Turks with millions of dollars to make it like the home of the Democratic operatives or whatever. It's while we are even discussing this, while anti-Zionism is being actively suppressed on basically every platform, they don't want us. They want their perfect mouthpiece that cheers on wars and condemns protests and supports Biden. They want Diddy G, but not offensive. Okay, offensive is offensive is the nicest thing you can say for Destiny and his entire community. They are utterly repulsive, incredibly toxic. They are poison. While it's ironic that they tried to present me as that and can't contend with why average human beings don't see it in the way that they do, any group that finds themselves routinely advocating for white people to be able to say the N-word and advocating against victims of sexual assault or debating the ethics of child pornography with a bunch of neo-Nazis online, those guys they're not in the real world. They're in this like extremely online space. Okay, there's a clip of him from today saying he's working with DNC operatives now to block you from interacting with the party. I mean, fine. I don't care. I don't need to interact with the DNC. It doesn't do anything for me. I don't think that these people understand that. Like, at least Flaherty seemingly understands that the Democrats need me more than I need them. And it's true. And I don't care if the Democratic Party tomorrow was like, listen, we are going to advocate for Medicare for all. Even if they never talk to me ever again, I would be their number one propaganda minister. Okay? Making a leftist Joe Rogan doesn't change the fact that 86-year-old Nancy Pelosi, while recovering from a free hip replacement, campaigned for a 70-year-old with throat cancer for oversight committee rather than a 35-year-old. The geriatric ghouls in Congress refuse to step down. Exactly. I'm gonna use this as a wonderful segue to talk about the AOC oversight committee vote that took place already. Those things all need to happen together, he said. And the reality is, it's not going to be big media organizations. It's going to be a network and a constellation of individual personalities because that's how people get their information now. Flaherty says he believes the ecosystem need to grow in order to sort of stimulate demand. There is some truth to this. As people run away from cable, the center-left starts to distrust mainstream media, and as the mainstream media outlets become more reliant on their mostly center-left subscribers, all of this is going to kind of happen in tandem. I don't even think you would be what they want, even if they did support those things, because you care about foreign policy and internationalism, and they will never back down from imperialism. I think that's a big part of it as well. But there used to be a space within the Democratic Party for people who actually were openly anti-imperialist, okay? That is the problem. That is completely gone from the coalitions. It's completely abolished. There is not a single Democrat that is known for having an anti-imperialist slant, okay? At most, you get the likes of Bernie Sanders, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and every now and then AOC, okay? There are no Gravels anymore. And it's not just Gravel either. The problem is you could still make it work. You could still be someone who is critical of the Democratic Party's, administration, the administrative function when it comes to American empire, and yet still advocate for them. Yeah, the Barbara Lees of the world. Exactly. You could do that. That's fine. There was a space in that big tent. But I think the Democrats have openly cast aside and have reduced their ranks or destroyed that wing of the party, even though this is yet another divergence within the Democratic Party's operations and the Democratic Party's base of support. Not even just the, diehard Dems, but specifically just Americans in general. Like, Americans broadly do not see themselves as pro-war. Americans are fearful, and yes, they are oblivious to American empire, but when asked directly about their opinions, they're like, I don't want war. I don't like war. I'm not a fan of war. Donald Trump now, this is the second time Donald Trump cast himself as a anti-war guy. Now, we know that that's not the truth. We know that that's not the truth, but he still ran as an anti-war guy, okay? And he still presented him that. He still presented himself as that. In the weeks since Trump's reelection, savvy and clueless media observers alike have chalked up Harris's problems in the media to small decisions like a failure to appear on Rogan's podcast. A moment that Flaherty acknowledged was a missed opportunity. This misunderstands a simple aspect of the media strategy that gleaned from speaking with both the Trump campaign and the Harris campaign about their approaches to new media. Ultimately, their media strategies weren't particularly different. Both campaigns leaned hard into alternative new media. I don't think they did. I don't think Flaherty leaned as hard into alternative media as Trump did. Like, the maximum alternative media they went on was call her daddy. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. You can appear on every platform, but if you are not uniquely telegenic in the way that Trump is, okay? If you are not uniquely telegenic in the way that Trump is, then you have to make up for it with good policies that address the genuine issues that Americans are experiencing. And if you can't do that, if you can't actually do that, then you have to make up for it with something, anything. You have to make up for your lack of telegenic, charismatic politicians with good policies. One of the things both you and the right understand more than the general left is that no matter how much information you give someone, it's very hard to change their values. Leftists spend too much time telling the most racist man alive that Trump is racist. The right doesn't bother telling trans people that Trump will help them. It tells transphobes it'll hurt them. There's some truth to that as well. But I do think that people can have their values be changed. But I don't think the method of doing that is by spirited debate or whatever. I don't think that's how that works either. I think that the way you do that... Hold on, I got to get my mom an Uber real quick. My mom is getting discharged from the hospital. Why isn't it working? What the hell? Okay. I hope everything's okay. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Why was she there? My mom got a knee replacement. Yep. Wait, what? Why isn't it working? You're requesting a wheelchair. Yeah. I want a wheelchair accessible vehicle. Why does it not letting me do it? Couldn't she have gone to Europe like other politicians do? Yeah. For the record, I dropped her off at the hospital. Man, everybody shut the f up. Oh my God. The parasocial nature of this content creation is so insane. Hold on. Still. Okay. Hopefully this will work. All right. The problem in my mind is that the Democrats are the poor streamer. I know. I shouldn't have just it's my fault. I should have not. I shouldn't have brought it up because I know that chat goes crazy over this shit. Anyway. So after this article came out in Semaphore, Fox News wrote, top Harris aide hypes radical activists said America deserved 9/11 while plotting future for Dems. House Dem called Hasan Piker a poster child for the post-October 7th outbreak of anti-Semitism in America earlier this year. A top aide on vice president's failed presidential campaign recently called for more cultural voices in the vocal anti-America, anti-Israel Twitter star Hasan Piker, who previously faced backlash for saying America deserved 9/11. Harris' former deputy campaign manager, Rob Flaherty, said during a recent interview the Democrats are losing control of culture. It's ironic because I think this is, once again, the right side of mainstream media also doing the same shit that they routinely criticize the Democrats for doing. And it virtually goes nowhere. Okay? The pearl clutching over this when Trump literally went on some of the worst people shows. Yeah, exactly. Terrorism tag at the top. Yeah. We need a whole thriving ecosystem, Flaherty told Semaphore. It's not just a Pod Save America, though I think we should have more of them. It's not just Hasan Piker. We should have more Hasan Pikers. It's also cultural creators, the folks who are one rung out, who influence the nonpartisan audience. Those things all need to happen together. The reality is not going to be a big media organization. It's going to be a network and a constellation of individual personalities because that's how they get their information now. Flaherty, who previously served as director of digital strategy for the Biden White House, is likely to face backlash. I love the way that mainstream media operates, where they are like, he's likely to face backlash as they are signaling to create backlash. Oh, he's likely to face backlash for this. We're going to try and create backlash. It's not going to happen. Yeah, dude. Someone who is not even remotely connected to the Democratic Party. What is this? Hold on. Sorry for letting you know. Luigi is being indicted. Yeah. Who previously raised more than $1 million for Palestinian aid, which is used as a platform of millions of followers to downplay and justify terrorist attacks such as October 7 and 9/11 as acts of resistance in recent years. Brave soldier, wounded operative, Representative Dan Crenshaw was deployed to Afghanistan. In another stream, Piker broadcasts propaganda for the Houthis. They do musicals about their actions all the time, so the terrorist propaganda. They still run this. If it doesn't matter if rapes happen on October 7, Piker said in a May 22nd stream, it doesn't change the dynamic of Palestinian and Israelis for me. Yeah, that was me defending that. Once again, that was me quite literally. Yeah, it's rehashing the old article from this point on. But as you guys already know what this is me quite literally saying October 7 rapes do not justify genocide, which is, I think, the most understandable, the most normal, the most moral position. You know? Oh man, I can't believe he said whether rapes or not occurred on October 7 does not change the dynamic for me one bit. It does not make genocide appropriate. I know. You laugh at it, but I've literally met people IRL who think you feel those things because of this kind of misinfo. Yeah, okay, well, you can correct them and be like, do you think it's appropriate for Israel to do genocide because of October 7? And if their answer is yes, then, you know, they just have that perspective. There's not much I can do about that. While Senator Ed Markey, Representative AOC, and others have been on Piker's platform, Richie Torres of New York wrote a letter. Like, think about this. On the one hand, you have Ed Markey, AOC, and others who have been on my platform. On the other hand, it's Richie Torres who wrote a letter crying about me. Who do you think has more motion in the future of the Democratic Party? Who do you think has more prominence? Hold on. Based on the Pelosi vote, Torres? No, dude. I'm not talking about within, first of all, Richie Torres doesn't have motion within institutional Democrats as well. Okay? He's just an idiot. He is a he's a paid propagandist for Israel, and he has never in his entire life had any sort of motion whatsoever outside of that. It doesn't matter. Outside the context of October 7th, Mr. Piker has been joked and mused about men. What the is this? Men date raping women on a college campus and has posted an image of a handgun on top of a U.S. senator in what appears to be an open invitation to gun violence against a sitting elected official. Torres said, inviting one's followers to shoot an elected official, whether it be done in earnest or in jest, is the kind of threat that warrants a serious. Richie Torres is DDG's strongest soldier. Piker's Twitch streams regularly hit more than 1 million views and often as many as 30,000 viewers at any given time. Certain people who are openly happy with the death of Republicans are so happy with Fox News right now. Oh, you mean Destiny's community? I know. Yeah, none of this shit matters. You know what my positions are. This is more lame-ass Fox News noise. I like that Richie Torres is defending Tom Cotton here, though. That's funny. He's like, it's so unacceptable. And as far as like the Hasan has laughed about date rape on college campuses, that is quite literally not the point I was making at all. I was saying that if these Republicans want to send their children to an anti-woke college, okay, because they're so worried about, you know, Title IX and date rape in other colleges being prosecuted because it's an anti-woke college that they're sending it to, it's better to at least contain the worst people in those anti-woke colleges. It is a utilitarian, it serves a utilitarian purpose. Don't repeat it, Lamau. No, I don't give a I think stripping that of its context is so insane. Like, I don't know about this, Hasan. You don't know about what? Oh, you got a real hit piece. You must be so proud. I mean, it's like taking my Florida project seriously and being like, wow, Hasan wants to put every cryptocurrency loving pedophile he wants to exile them to Florida and then build walls around the state of Florida and then inevitably sink it. Yeah, I know, dude. I know. That's what I want. That's real. That's a valid thing that I'm saying. Like, shut the f up. I need you all to be serious for a brief moment. I need you all to please, for the love of Christ and all things holy. Oh, there is no availability for this either. God damn it. Hold on. I'm going to try it one more time. Why can't I do this? You weren't serious about the Florida project? Yeah, I know. There was a frontline doc that explained what you meant, but it was more than a 5-second clip. What do you mean? It is kind of crazy how difficult it is to get like an appropriate accessibility vehicle. I'm shocked at the, yeah. By the way, this is straight up from the, like, this is a video that is like readily available on my YouTube page as well. People are so funny to just like keep robbing this of its context, but it is a insane PragerU documentary where they're championing like virtually a pro-rape college campus. Okay. It is a Republican college campus that is supposed to be designed to be anti-woke. This community is 90% drama perverts who persistently get what they want. Yeah, I know. Don't be. Accessibility is a farce in this country. I know. It is kind of crazy. Kamala's brother-in-law is responsible for both the election loss and your mom not getting the transport she deserves. I agree. Chad did push back, though, at the time, and I personally didn't like the joke either, but to pretend that you were calling for rape is insane. Yeah, I know. But it's okay. Here's the other thing, though. Here's the other thing that people need to understand, okay? A lot of people on the left have this proclivity to very easily get duped by shit like this. Okay? People have this tendency where they will see something out of context, especially on the left. People on the right never do this. People on the right could quite literally be like, we have to kill all trans people, okay? And not a single person will be like, that doesn't sound normal. Like, that sounds great. Like, no right-wing audience will ever look at a CNN article, a CNN hit piece, or even a Fox News article and go, I agree with the Fox News article's framing on this. People on the left, on the other hand, will be like, whoa, hold on. I am going to take this false framing at face value and I'm going to make a big deal about it. Okay? I'm actually going to make a big deal about it. I mean, you can keep doing it. You can keep doing it all day, every day if you want. But I think the smartest thing to do in this process is to go, does this make sense with all that I know about this person? Does this actually make sense at all? Does this contradict the values that I know Hasan holds? Or does it not? That's all you need to do. Because every single time you come in here and you look at like malicious framing, yes, T. Blasian is right. It's like as a liberal or as a liberal or as a leftist or as a progressive, when you go into the malicious framing, you basically come in and you say, I believe the malicious framing, please address my stupidity. That's all it is. And I think that also certainly creates this New York City and the entire country. It certainly breeds hostility towards progressive positions in general as well.